forgive me, oh my Lord, for every mention but the mention of Thee, and for every praise but the praise of Thee, and for every delight but delight in Thy nearness, and for every pleasure but the pleasure of communion with Thee, and for every joy but the joy of Thy love and of Thy good pleasure, and for all things pertaining unto me which bear no relationship unto Thee, O Thou art the Lord of lords, He who provideth the means and unlocketh the door. I beg Thee to forgive me, O my Lord, for every mention but the mention of Thee, and for every praise but the praise of Thee, and for every delight but delight in Thy nearness, and for all things pertaining unto me which bear no relationship unto Thee, O Thou art the Lord of lords, He who provideth the means
And the happy ending in the middle of my story is that through that connection to God and my spirit, I was also able to find authentic joy and peace, finally. And that, in turn, connected me to renewed passion, new purpose, new work, new love. And none of that would have been possible. It couldn't have even been possible if I hadn't been stripped away of all the things I thought I needed. Now, forgiveness played a pivotal role for me. I think that it's easy to forget that forgiveness helps us sometimes more than it helps the people that we forgive. A dear friend of mine used to always say, unforgiveness is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. And that's so true. For me, forgiveness was the key to freedom because it was the true letting go of the past so that I could live in and appreciate the present without contamination. And constantly, consciously choosing a new way of being and a new way of thinking was like defuzzing for me. It was taking old feelings off of new events so that I could enter into new relationships feeling worthy and with an illumined heart. So I'm going to ask you to do a little exercise with me. Normally this is a meditation, but you can do it eyes open or eyes closed, and it's a forgiveness meditation. So ask your heart right now to bring to mind someone that you still have a hard time forgiving. And imagine them here with you and see them as this person that you made a soul contract with, not as the human that they are with all their foibles and flaws and imperfections, but try to see them through God's eyes. And say to them now in your mind, I forgive you for all the things that you've done, consciously or unconsciously, to hurt, offend, or harm me in any way. And allow that to land. And now, I want you to say, please forgive me for anything I've done in retaliation or otherwise to hurt or harm or offend you, consciously or unconsciously. And allow that to land. And then the bigger one. Allow yourself forgiveness and empathy. Take a moment to forgive yourself for all the things you are ashamed of, ways that you behaved that you're not proud of, not being compassionate or empathic to yourself, all the ways consciously or unconsciously we're cruel to ourselves, for all the anger or rage or blame. Forgive yourself. And now hug this person and thank them for the gifts and send them on their way. Now, forgiveness is rarely linear. There are many levels to it, and many times we have to do this exercise again and again. But it is truly a tool and a key to breaking your spirit free to shine again. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Well, I hope that when you leave tonight, you will forgive me if I did not meet your expectations. Because coming here in this hot evening and wanting to together to look at the concept of forgiveness, it requires asking your forgiveness. I've been thinking about this topic for many years. However, in recent weeks and months, this issue has become the subject of discussion in Canada, in the United States, in many parts of the world. For example, in Canada, we have been talking about what has happened to the First Nations, to the Aboriginal peoples of this land. And the issue of forgiveness has been mentioned on different occasions, different ways. In the United States, only 2 days ago, or yesterday was it, the President of the United States, Mr. Obama, was talking about the remarkable forgiveness that was expressed on the part of 9 families of the 9 people who were killed in a church and in Charleston, and how great was the impact of forgiveness in the psyche of the society in the United States. But the issue of forgiveness goes much deeper than that, because we human beings have a natural tendency, natural meaning what is based on our physical, biological nature, okay? We have a natural tendency that when somebody does something wrong to us, we want to retaliate. We want to take revenge. This is a natural reaction. Natural, again, meaning it is the expression of the biological dimension of human nature. As you know, we human beings are in the crossroad of creation. On the one hand, we have our one foot in the animal world. On the other hand, we can put our other foot or both feet in the spiritual world. And we have this phenomena of will, of decision making, that can take us this way or that way. And that is why the expression of human nature is always in this seeming duality. On the one hand, we may be animal-like, naturally responding to this, or we may respond the other way. Now, throughout history, humanity has had 2 sources of guidance. One has been religion, and the other has been science. They have guided us how to live. And always, religion has been ahead of science. Not the other way around. People think science is ahead of religion, and religion is backward. But in reality, when we reflect and think and observe what has happened in human history, we see that religion has been always ahead of science in prescribing how we should live our lives. Now, forgiveness is an example of that. So what I'm going to do to share with you very briefly vignettes of what different religions throughout history have given teachings about forgiveness. Then I'm going to share with you new scientific studies that are being done about forgiveness, and then we reach a little bit of a conclusion together at the end. So that's the whole idea. Now, religions, I'm just going to go one by one and just give you an example. In Judaism, for example, if a person causes harm but then sincerely and honestly apologizes to the wronged individual and tries to rectify the wronged individual is religiously required to grant forgiveness. Now that's interesting. Here in Judaism, if somebody does wrong to you, you should go and ask for forgiveness. And if you go and ask for forgiveness, you should forgive them. So that's in Christianity. The Peter came to him, Jesus, and said, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? That's what Peter asked. And Jesus answered, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. That's 490 times. Okay? Up to 70 times 7. Jesus repeatedly spoke about forgiveness. In Islam teaches that Allah is Al-Ghafur, the one that forgives, and is the original source of all forgiveness. God is the original source of all forgiveness. And seeking forgiveness from Allah is a virtue. We always have to ask forgiveness. There is much more in Islam, but it's sufficient for our purposes here. In Buddhism, he abused me, he struck me, he overcame me, he robbed me. In those who harbor such thoughts, hatred will never cease. If you think he abused me, he struck me, and so forth, if you don't forget that, if you don't forgive that, then hatred will never leave you. It will be always with you. And then Buddha says, in Buddhism, it says, he abused me, he struck me, he overcame me, he robbed me. In those who do not harbor such thoughts, hatred will cease. If you don't have these thoughts, you will not be hateful. In Zoroastrianism, the teachings of forgiveness, mercy, and tolerance are essential aspects of religion, of Zoroastrianism. So the question comes, how come all these religions about talking about forgiveness? But when we read the writings of the Baha'i faith, we come into a much more profound elaboration of the concept of forgiveness. There are at least 3 areas when we read the writings of the Baha'i faith that come to attention, or at least came to my attention about forgiveness. First, we have to ask for forgiveness. We always have to ask forgiveness. We have to ask forgiveness from God because we are not perfect. We have to ask forgiveness from other people because nobody is perfect. Okay. I'm sorry to mention, I apologize. Okay. But nobody is perfect. So we have to ask for forgiveness. The second is that we have to consciously forgive. We have to develop the capacity to forgive. And that's a very difficult thing to do. Because as I said, natural tendency of people is that say, I have been wronged, I cannot forget this, I never would forget them or that person. Okay? And the third thing that we read in the writings of the Baha'i faith we come across is that we have to ask to be forgiven. We have to actually have the courage to go to somebody and say, please forgive me. Okay? We have to forgive, we have to be asked forgive, forgiveness. And of course, we have to turn to God and ask for forgiveness. Listen to this statement of Abdul Baha. Abdul Baha says, love the creatures for the sake of God and not for themselves. You will never become angry or impatient if you love them for the sake of God. Why? Abdul Baha said, humanity is not perfect. There are imperfections in every human being. And you will always become unhappy if you look toward the people themselves. But if you look toward God, you will love them and be kind to them, for the word of God is the word of perfection and complete mercy. Therefore, do not look at the shortcomings of anybody. See with the sight of forgiveness. So, one of the tendencies of as human beings is that when something is contrary to our desires and our inclinations, we try to either ignore it